You are listening to One Nation Under Crime, a historical, chronological true crime podcast. Each week, we go through our nation's history and discuss cases from each year starting in 1800, except for this week. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
I promised, and I'm here to deliver. I promised
she's
a spooky
a girl of her
episode.
word.
I did. I know. So I am aware we actually have an episode coming out on Halloween.
Dun, da, da, da.
But because everybody's still in the spooky mood, I decided that our spooky episode, or really just interesting episode, should come out the week before. Give you a little time to still be in the mood for spooky.
So would the Halloween one be the spooky-sode?
Nope, that's this one.
Okay. Are we calling it the spooky-sode?
We can.
Okay. This is our spooky-sode.
Yes, we can do that. So I wanted people to be able to have time to bask in the spookiness.
And even share it with others.
And then, everybody else, the others you share with, can listen to it on Halloween. But we have an interesting episode for this week. It is not your typical episode in some senses.
But we're not really typical.
No, we are not. But we are on episode 73 this week. And we are still in the year 1856, even in some of our stories for this week.
Dun, 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 dun.
So I'll go ahead and run through our sources real quick. We have the Eldridge Hotel, Legends of America, Strange History, White House History, and this will give you a little bit of an insight. A White House seance and a president's sad secret.
Oh, my.
So, and we did say it at the end of the last week. I said that we would discuss it this week. I need, everyone knows you're of spooky season. A lot of our listeners, I'm sure, are Disney fans, much like ourselves. I need your opinion. And if you've not watched it yet, I'm sorry. Hocus Pocus 2.
It was definitely a sequel.
Yes, it was.
I mean, it was definitely a sequel. SJP, love her.
Always.
But man, the makeup. Like her eyebrows.
They did something very weird
like
with her eyebrows.
Some big old caterpillars up on her. I mean,
it's like they connected her eyeliner to her eyebrows. It was a lot.
I was not a fan of that.
I was not a fan of that either. How did you feel about the story? See, I have a small child to watch it with.
Yeah, I do like how they Disneyfied it. They made it a happy.
There were a lot of callbacks to the first movie that I did genuinely appreciate.
I did. I loved when the mob was like finding there was somebody in the mom from the original like had on the Madonna costume.
And then there were a lot of costumes. You had to pay attention, but there were a lot of people that you could see that were wearing costumes from the first movie.
And I did love when they went to the Walgreens. When at Walgreens they went to.
That was funny.
And they're eating, she was eating a face, now that was funny. And of course, Bette Midler and Kathy DeJimmy as well. All three of them, I love that they got, if they hadn't been able to get those three, it would have been.
If they wouldn't have been able to get a lot of the originals, if Billy, if they wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the same, I really liked, they tied it in very well to the first movie. It is not a stand. You do have to know the first movie to know that. My favorite part was, if anybody noticed, the magic shop was in the old house.
Yes.
So that was first of all. Second of all, he's telling the story to the kids. Mm-hmm. And my favorite part is when the kid raises his hand, and you know what I'm going to say. Actually, that was one of the producer's sons.
Yes, I read that.
He raises his hand and he goes, "What's a virgin?" And he goes, "Someone who's never lit a candle." I was like, it was great. There were a lot of inside humor. It was definitely Disney in the fact there were a lot of tongue-in-cheek jokes.
Yes.
That you had to be an adult to understand, which I do love when Disney does that.
Yes.
I really liked it I will say there are a lot of people that hated it and said that it was not good.
Well, but it's not going to be the first one. It can't be the first one.
But it was campy. I love camp. I love a camp in a movie. Actually, speaking of campy, just watched Clue again last night.
I watched it.
No.
I did.
How did you feel?
It was great.
I told you.
It was great.
I cannot believe you didn't tell me you watched Clue.
I meant to. I'm sorry.
How did
great.
you?
It was great.
How many times have you seen it now?
Well,
Just
I only watched it the once.
When you watch it the second time,
I'm going to pay more attention.
You'll catch up a lot. Did you notice that the guy, his name was Mr. Body?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he was the body.
Uh-huh. It was great. It was great. It was great.
You saw what I meant when he was like, and back to the beginning. And they all have to run back.
Yes, it was great. It was great. I enjoyed it.
Flames on the side of my face.
Yes, it was great. It was great. It was great.
So it was very campy.
Yes.
Like Clue.
And I liked the actors in it. I mean, so many actors. It's great. Yes.
But yes, with Hocus Pocus, I really enjoyed it.
Well, I mean, anything that has Bette Midler in it, I'm pretty much going to love because Bette Midler.
How did they look better in this movie than they did in the first?
SJP did not look better.
No, that's for other reasons. But when we were watching it, because we watched the first one after we watched the second one, and I was like, oh, they look older in this.
But I will say I was very impressed with the younger versions
of the girls.
Of them, how well they did.
They were good.
I mean,
I liked them a lot though too. It cracked me up when she was
Mary with the sideways face. Like
they did a really good. And of course, and the friend that kind of went off was because of a boy. So it was very like good in that sense. And there were a lot of really funny parts to it that were just interesting. And it brought the story kind of forward to now. And some people were like, oh, it was like, I really liked the first like 10 minutes of it. And then and it's like, then you weren't in the mood to watch it.
Yeah.
Then you weren't, because it was, when we finished it, did you watch it all the way to the end of the credits?
I think. What am I missing? What?
You would know if you watched it to the end of the credits. The cat does something.
Then I guess I didn't.
There's an extra scene at the end.
Okay.
That gives you the indication there might be another movie.
Oh.
Because you know how he says, sorry guys, if you don't want the spoiler, skip forward like 30 seconds. Now, he says, there's not another black candle. There is another black candle. And at the very end of the movie, the cat in the shop, you see him walk across the floor and he jumps up onto a shelf and he bumps this box and it says BFC number 2. So there's another black flame candle.
Very
and
cool.
So it was kind of one of those things like somebody said that. And if you pay attention when you're watching, I've already said the spoiler, guys. So if you're back, you're back. This is not a spoiler. If you're watching it on Disney Plus, which of course everybody is, if you pay attention, it will say, you know how like some things you watch, it'll say skip intro. It'll say skip credits. And I was like, skip credits. And I clicked it and it jumped to the scene. So yeah, but it's a really, the way they did it was very good. So they left it kind of open to like, maybe something else could happen. And I think that if they did another movie with just the girls, I think it would be a good movie. I think it would be very cute.
I think
they were very, very, very good for being actors that nobody knows really who they are. And it was great.
And I mean, like I said, they Disney-fied it. Definitely, they Disney-fied it.
They did.
But you know, they brought that
the feel back. Like there was, it was very. If you weren't watching it because you watched the first one,
then you weren't gonna like it.
But you also still could figure out what happened.
Yeah.
because they did tie that back very well. It's like why they're here, why the candle, why this, why that.
But bringing it back to the whole thing is, the love of the three sisters. That was the whole thing.
That was very good. That was cool. I really enjoyed the way it ended. I thought it was a very, compared to the first movie and how it ended, I thought this was a really good, like, common out. Like if it were the last, it finished very well.
Which is what I mean by they Disney-fied it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Did you notice that Thackeray was the voiceover in the beginning?
No, I did not pay attention. Which is James Marsden.
No.
Yes.
Thackeray Binks is not James Marsden.
His voice is. Not the body, but the voice is.
No, it's not. It's the guy from CSI.
His face is.
No.
I promise.
No, it's the voice. Because we were looking at that earlier. It's not. Hold on. We're back. I looked it up. It was not James Marsden. I'm glad I looked it up. Yes, it was Jason Marsden, and it is the same guy from the first Hocus Pocus who was the voice of Thackeray. No, you're right. In the first movie, Thackeray is the guy from CSI or whatever, NCIS. But his voice is not. No.
Yeah, but I know it's not the same voice.
But no, the same voice is him in the very beginning.
But what was his name? It was
Jason Marsden.
Okay, so I was close.
Yes, but not James.
James. I knew the voice didn't match up with the person.
No, not quite. But Jason Marsden, he's been in a ton of stuff. So yes, glad all of you could hear our hot take on that. And
you're welcome.
You're welcome. And we'll get into kind of the beginning of our episode is going to kind of be typical as to what it is on a normal episode week. But the rest of it is not. So we'll hop into our births for 1856, January 8th, Elizabeth Taylor, not that one. She's a painter and traveler. Her travel essays from Alaska, Canada, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands and Norway were published in several famous magazines, including the Atlantic Monthly and Forest and Stream. She was a Capricorn. January 12th, John Singer Sargent was born. He was an American expat artist who, if people aren't sure what an expat is, it's an expatriate. So somebody who used to be a United States citizen and left, who was considered the leading portrait painter of his generation for his evocations of Edwardian era luxury. He created roughly 900 oil paintings and over 2,000 watercolors.
That's just a couple.
Yeah. He's also a Capricorn. February 2nd, we have Frederick William Vanderbilt. Of course, he's a railway magnate, member of American Vanderbilt family. He was a director of the New York Central Railroad for 61 years and also a director of the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad. He was an Aquarius. We then have March 20th, Frederick Winslow Taylor. He's an inventor and efficiency expert, widely known for his methods to improve industrial efficiency and was one of the first management consultants. His pioneering work in applying engineering principles to the work done on the factory floor was instrumental in the creation and development of the branch of engineering that is now known as industrial engineering.
Not
so he created
my area.
So as a result of scientific management, it is sometimes referred to as Taylorism, not necessarily industrial engineering. He was a Pisces. April 5th, Booker T. Washington was born. He was an educator, author, orator, and advisor to several presidents of the United States. He was an Aries. April 23rd, Granville T. Woods. He was a African-American inventor. He held more than 50 50 patents in the United States and was the first African American mechanical and electrical engineer after the Civil War.
That's awesome. And his first name was Granville?
Granville. Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go.
Granville Woods. That is a professor's name if I've ever heard one.
I mean, that's a pretty grand name.
It is. May 15th, L. Frank Baum. He was a children's writer and the writer of The Wizard of Oz.
Okay, I was going to say I know that name. I know that name.
Yes. He wrote 14 novels in the Oz series, plus 41 other novels, 83 short stories, over 200 poems, and at least 42 scripts. There are actually 4 novels that he wrote that are unpublished and have been lost.
Oh, that's sad.
Some people think a part of Oz is in there.
Interesting.
So
I've read The Wizard of Oz, and it's different from the movie.
Yeah.
And it was actually political.
Yes, very, very much
Mm-hmm.
so.
Very interesting.
The 1939 adaptation of the first Oz book became a landmark of 20th century cinema, and it came out 20 years after his death. He was a Taurus. July 11th, Georgiana Drew. Do you know that name?
No.
She was a stage actress. Later, her name, after marriage, was Georgiana Drew Barrymore. She is the great-grandmother and namesake of actress Drew Barrymore. She was a Cancer.
That's awesome.
I was like, Georgiana Drew. And then it said Barrymore. And I was like, Drew Barrymore?
Wait a minute.
So yeah, she was named after her. And she was also an actress, which
That's
I thought was
awesome.
crazy. October 7th, Moses Fleetwood Walker. He was a baseball pitcher, widely credited as the first Black baseball player.
That is an awesome name.
That is a great baseball name.
And I was going to say, and that's a great baseball name too.
He is a Libra. October 30th, Charles Leroux. He was a balloonist and parachutist. He went to Europe in 1889 in order to demonstrate his skill in flying balloons and parachuting from them. He is known to have performed exhibition jumps in Germany and Russia. He's a Scorpio. December 23rd, James Buchanan Buck Duke. He was a tobacco and electric power industrialist, best known for the introduction of modern cigarette manufacturing and marketing. He is also the son of the namesake of Duke University.
Nice.
He's a Capricorn. And December 28th, we have a name you might know, Woodrow Wilson. He's the 28th president of the United States.
I know that name.
He's a Capricorn. Our deaths in 1856, April 19th, we have Thomas Rogers. He is a mechanical engineer and locomotive builder. Fellow locomotive designer and builder Zariah Colburn said, quote, Thomas Rogers may be fairly said to have done more for the modern American locomotive than any of his contemporaries combined. April 20th, Robert Livingston died. Robert Livingston Stevens. He was an inventor and steamship builder commissioned by the government to build the first ironclad warship ever constructed, but he died before he completed his project.
Is that old Ironsides?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of that.
July 9th, James Strang. He was a Mormon splinter group leader and self-proclaimed monarch. He tried.
Can I proclaim myself a monarch?
You can proclaim yourself anything your heart desires.
Awesome.
I'm sure other people have already proclaimed you as something.
They have. They have. And that's all we'll say about that. Moving right along.
He tried to convince Brigham Young that Joseph Smith appointed him to run the church after his death. September 7th, Almon Whitting Babbitt. He was
nice.
He was an early. There we go. Early leader. I was trying to say early and leader at the same time, and it was not coming out. in the LDS movement, and he was the first secretary. Again, I try to say secretary and treasurer at the same time. Anyways,
do we need to do some warm ups?
Maybe. Territory.
Red leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow leather.
He was the first secretary and treasurer of the territory of Utah. Now, we do not have a person that we're focusing on for this week because we do have several stories to get to this week. And there were so many interesting people for this year that I couldn't cut them down. And usually I will try to cut things down if like people aren't super well known, but we had a lot that were very well known or just very, very interesting that I wanted to make sure we left in. So, are you ready? You're not ready.
Oh, I'm not ready?
You're not ready.
Oh, dear.
You need to be ready. May 21st of 1856. Does that date sound familiar to you maybe from the last episode? May 21st, 1856.
Yes, it does. Something important happened that day.
Did. So the sacking of Lawrence.
The sacking of Lawrence happened that day.
That was right on the tip of your tongue. I saw it.
It was working through. It was about to come out.
It was. Unlike me, you were making sure that you could say things correctly.
Exactly.
I got it. I was helping you along. Yep. Right.
Exactly.
So, is that clear? It was an attack on the anti-slavery town by pro-slavery proponents. We discussed that last week. Well, remember when we talked about...
And then John Brown lost his mind.
True. I said that the Free State Hotel was destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well...
accidentally, people lost their lives. Accidentally. One person accidentally lost his life.
Well, the Free State Hotel's story does not end there that day. Rebuilding the hotel started immediately by Colonel Eldridge and his brothers. In 1857, the Eldridge Hotel opened in the same spot as the Free State Hotel, costing around $80,000 or $2.9 million today.
Ooh.
Colonel Eldridge vowed...
So it was just a little hovel.
It was small. It's really small.
An inn, really.
Yeah, really. Like a bed and breakfast, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Eldridge vowed that if it were ever destroyed again, that it would be rebuilt. And he might be psychic because in 1863, the hotel was attacked by Confederate forces. The proud city of Lawrence was determined to rebuild and quickly adopted the motto from ashes to immortality.
Oh.
Which is an interesting phrase.
That really is.
And for what's coming up, it is too.
Oh, no.
Using an original cornerstone from the burned hotel, Colonel Eldridge promptly rebuilt the hotel, which opened again in 1865 with a new name, the Hotel Eldridge. For several decades, the Eldridge Hotel stood as one of the finest hotels west of the Mississippi River. It continued to play an essential role in the early development of Lawrence and the state of Kansas. But by 1925, the hotel had begun to deteriorate when a group of Lawrence business leaders decided that due to the hotel's importance, it should be torn down and rebuilt to its former elegance. So this will be the third time it's torn down, right? Okay. So the hotel would undergo 2 more overhauls by 1985. And if there is one thing that we know about restorations and renovations, what does it always stir up?
A lot of dust.
Spirit activity.
A lot of dust.
Promised a spooky episode. Here we are. With a history as tragic and expansive as the Eldridge Hotel, it's no surprise that some of its patrons might have decided to stay.
Dun, dun, dun.
That reminds me. You remember the dramatic squirrel? That's what that reminds me of. Dun, dun, dun.
You're welcome.
Thanks. The 5th floor is said to contain a portal to the spirit world, specifically room 506. In this room, witnesses have reported breath marks on recently cleaned mirrors.
No, thank you.
Doors opening and shutting on their own, and lights turning on and off by themselves. If my boyfriend were listening right now, he would say condensation on a recently cleaned mirror, obviously wind drafts going through the hotel, causing a door to open and close, and lights turning on and off, clearly by faulty wiring, because he's a non-believer. Shun the non-believer. Is that from, anyways.
I have no idea where that's from. I don't watch all that spooky mess you watch.
No, it's a TikTok.
Well, I don't watch that either.
Not anymore, you don't. But no, it was a TikTok audio, and it was shun the non-believer. They're talking about something. Anyways, they were talking about Big Rock Candy Mountain, and he was like, Candy Mountain doesn't exist, and he goes, shun the non-believer. Candy Mountain. Anyways, there's me. So others report cold spots throughout the old hotel. Some guests have even encountered apparitions on the 5th floor, and an elevator ghost likes to open and close the elevator doors on the 5th floor. Several photographers have also mentioned having inexplicable technical difficulties with their cameras when near the elevator. If you would like to stay there, the hotel is located at the corner of Massachusetts and 7th Streets in downtown Lawrence, Kansas, where it boasts the phrase, because I looked this up, where history and hospitality converge. Even though their online reservation site is down at the time of this recording, you can call and reserve a room for yourself. Maybe on the 5th floor? ? As for the hotel's stance on the hauntings, I will say this. A lot of hotels will deny that they are haunted. There is one very specific hotel in downtown Birmingham that will not comment on whether they are haunted or not. I know this because I asked when I checked into this specific hotel. They would not tell me whether this hotel was actually haunted, even though it is on the ghost tour of downtown Birmingham.
Really?
The Tutwiler.
I figured that was the
They
one.
will not tell you if it's haunted or not, period. And a lot of hotels will not do that. There's one in Dallas that you can ask them specifically and they will not. They'll say, we've heard stories, but they will not confirm or deny. So as for this hotel, this is directly from their website. Many buildings in Lawrence have a long history, but few have a haunted pedigree to match the Eldridge Hotel. Ghost hunters, reporters, and guests have all felt the ghostly welcome of Colonel Eldridge, whether it's the crackling of a water bottle in the middle of the night, the air conditioner randomly turning on, or watching your bags shake out of nowhere. We've seen it all and heard it all, and his favorite spot in the hotel is room 506. The Eldridge Hotel was featured on A&E's Biography Channel's hit show My Ghost Story. Some say the historic hotel is haunted. Watch the video and hear true and unbelievable stories by the paranormal as told by the people who lived through them and actually captured their hauntings on tape.
No, thank you.
These harrowing eyewitness accounts of the unexplainable are transformed into more than tales with terrifying visual evidence. You'll have no choice but to believe your eyes. So, haunted or not, you be the judge. There is a 3-minute clip of this episode that is available on YouTube, and I have put it in the show notes. Would you like to watch it together real quick? And then we'll come back to the recording. Okay, we're going to pause. Then we'll come back. So we have now watched
the
clip. Very pretty hotel.
It is
very
lovely.
pretty.
Well, I mean, any kind of historical building I'm going to love. I'm sorry. I'm a sucker for an old building with the beautiful staircases and just
that basement little staircase was a little creepy.
Not cool.
And
I don't know why you'd keep a beautiful chair in a basement.
Well, so there's a few different things that I've heard on other episodes about chairs, like haunted chairs and stuff, that they don't put them where people can mess with them because they're afraid of what could happen. So maybe that might be why they do it. But they said that dust never collects on that chair, which is weird.
That is weird.
But we did see a clip of an excerpt from the show where they came out and filmed the hotel and the room, and there were some orbs. There were some shadows on the wall that were quite creepy. So I don't know. Judge for yourself. It does seem, though, that by the hotel that they are pretty proud of their haunted history.
Mm-hmm.
And we did find out from the video that we watched that 506, the reason why it could be as haunted is because the original cornerstone is behind that wall.
Yeah.
Which would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If it were. So you go check it out and look for yourself. And so on to our next story for the week.
Dun, dun, dun.
March 3rd of 1855. The US Congress appropriated $20,000 to create the US Camel Corps.
We talked about that.
We did. Never thought that these camels would bring us here, but the story goes far beyond what we thought.
Oh, because it didn't work out and they sold them and...
Mm-hmm. So, most people know Jefferson Davis as the president of the Confederate States during the Civil War era. And I'm sure we will get into that in several episodes ahead from now. But before that, he was just a young Army officer. One day, another officer mentioned that the Army should use camels. They were able to survive in desert-like conditions in the Southwest. They didn't really require much food or water. They were strong and they could travel long distances without any issues.
And they had beautiful eyelashes.
Mm-hmm. Davis thought that the idea was intriguing, but there wasn't much he could do with the information until 20 years later. Franklin Pierce was the president, and we will get into it later, but things in the White House were chaotic at this moment. Jefferson Davis was serving as the Secretary of War, and he ordered the creation of the U.S. Camel Corps. Major Henry Wayne was sent to Turkey to purchase 62 camels and to bring trainers who could teach the soldiers the proper use and handling of the camels. The camels were transported by boat to Indianola, Texas, arriving on May 14th of 1856. Told you we would be in 1856 again. Told you. I tied it all back to 1856. I made sure of it. Once they arrived, the camels were driven overland to the newly established Camp Verde, located in Kerr County, Texas. Almost immediately, Army officers began to make notes regarding the camels' inability to cohabitate with the horses and mules.
Uh-oh.
And the camels also didn't get along with each other. But they invested a good bit into these camels, and they had to make do with what they had. One of the trainers from Turkey named Haji Ali started training the camels and the soldiers who were going to survey West Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. He even started a successful breeding program at Camp Verde in the event that the camels were used. Even though the camels had a good bit of promise, the Civil War halted any further efforts, and the government started selling the camels to anyone who would buy them. At the height of the war, Confederate forces were made up of mostly Home Guard and militia soldiers. They seized Camp Verde and the remaining camels in 1863. However, there are no records that reveal if the camels were ever used by the Confederates. I like to think they were. Most historians believe that the camels were released into the Texas plains. So where does this tie into a spooky themed episode?
And where'd all the camels go?
Fast forward to 1883 on an Arizona ranch where a woman was trampled to death by onlookers. And it was seen by onlookers, and it was described as a huge red beast with a skeletal creature riding on its back. The local ranchers took off in search of the specter, and the only thing they found were cloven hoof prints and red coarse hair.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. The story of the creature spread out and around the area, and not only did the sightings increase, but the stories of it became more fantastical. Now, it had the ability to take down and kill large animals like bears and cattle. It was almost 30 feet tall. 30. That is several of me standing on top of each other because I'm 5'5". It could run faster than any animal alive, and it could disappear at will. Just like that. That is when the tale of the red ghost was born.
Ooh.
The stories of the infamous cryptid didn't stop there. Several months after the death of the woman in Arizona, prospectors working near the Verde River, which was right by Camp Verde, came across the red ghost. They shot at it and it ran away. It didn't get away unscathed, though. As it ran away, something fell off of it. It was later identified by a local doctor as a human skull with flesh and hair attached.
Nice.
So somebody, they're hunting Bigfoot out there. That's what they're doing. So you never know.
Bigfoot riding a camel.
You never know.
Oh my gosh.
That's the best.
Bigfoot riding a camel.
After a red camel.
Oh my gosh.
Red camel. After the discovery of the skull, it was written in a local newspaper, the Mojave County Miner, that the beast may have been a camel. However, most residents of the area had never seen a camel and wouldn't know what one looked like. There also wasn't a viable explanation for seeing a skeleton riding on the back. The sightings continued for nearly a decade until February of 1893, when rancher Mizo Hastings sighted the red ghost just grazing in his vegetable patch.
Great. Didn't disappear. Didn't try to attack
It didn't
him.
go vanish and pop out.
Finishing powers, activate.
Nope. He retrieved his rifle and brought the beast down with a single shot.
Oh.
Ranchers gathered from all around to view the red ghost that had gained so much notoriety and had terrorized the citizens of southern Arizona since it first appeared in 1883. Oh, people were scared to go out of their houses. Like, people were not leaving. This was a big deal. Like, people were banding together. They were terrified that this thing was going to come because it killed a woman. Like, it trampled her to death.
And
they didn't know what it could be.
I know.
And so, so people were terrified. It was finally able to be determined that the devilish skeleton that had been seen riding the creature through the years was, in fact, a human skeleton. Didn't think it'd go there, did you?
Well, I thought maybe a trainer or somebody.
It had been clearly tied to the animal with thick leather straps many years earlier. There were several theories as to how this happened. It could have been a punishment, could have been a soldier killed during the war, or it could have been just a cryptid. I want to go with cryptid. I think that the power of the skeleton was also tied to the red ghost of the camel, and the two moved as one. It's like Avatar, where they sync up together, and that's what I like to think.
By the way, that ride, amazing.
That's what I've heard.
Amazing.
But I like to think that it was kind of one of those situations. But that's just me. There are several theories, and we don't quite know exactly what occurred. Whatever it was, New England can claim the headless horseman, but the Southwest has the red ghost.
Poor little camel.
So it's a cryptid. It was a whole story. I kept saying, I was like, what is this red ghost? Like, I was looking up spooky history 1856, and it kept pulling up the Camel Corps. I'm like, we've already talked about the camel. Right. What is going on? So one of the camels from the Camel Corps is now a cryptid.
Nice.
Like Bigfoot. Nice. Or the Headless Horseman. They also hold its place in history.
That's awesome.
Our last story for this week. January 6th, 1853. President-elect Franklin Pierce and his family were involved in a train wreck near Andover, Massachusetts. Pierce's 11-year-old son, Benjamin, was killed in the crash. Our last story this week is tied to a tragic event and likely the start of an entire White House phenomenon. We discussed the train wreck
the phenomenon.
We discussed the train wreck that killed President-elect Franklin Pierce's son, but there is so much more tied to the Pierce family. Some have said that President Pierce could have been possessed while others thought he was being punished by God. Could the family have actually been cursed? We're not sure. Franklin Pierce was born into a wealthy family in Hillsborough, New Hampshire, and he went to college in Maine and then to law school in Massachusetts. He was quickly admitted to the bar as a lawyer and then lost his first case in court.
Dun, dun.
It
happened.
That wasn't really a setback for him, though. He was the Hillsborough town moderator at the age of 23, in the state legislature by the age of 24, congressman at the age of 28, a U.S. senator at the age of 32, and he also served in the state militia all of that time where he rise to the position of a colonel. Just no big deal, just an overachiever every year of his life, apparently. But he was missing the one thing that he always wanted: a family. It's unclear how Pierce met Jane Appleton, but there were so many red flags with this union that Six Flags would be jealous. Franklin was an outgoing, loud Democrat in the life of the party. And we talked about it this time. Democrat is not the same Democrat that we know today. It's very different. Jane was a devout minister's daughter who was shy, despised politics and Washington, D.C., and was described as sickly looking for having survived a bout of tuberculosis. But if there was one thing that should have been a non-starter for the couple, it was this. Jane was an anti-alcoholic, stuck in the temperance movement, whereas Franklin Pierce could have survived as a fish in a whiskey barrel.
Oh, dear.
We're not talking casual drinker. We're talking heavy drinking and functioning, seemingly. So,
perhaps that was his issue.
No, because he's fine. Up until all of this, he's always been like a pretty heavy drinker. Always. And we'll see that later too, for other things. But either way, they got married in 1834 when Franklin was 30 and Jane was 28. The source that I read said Jane was considered a spinster at 28. I was
Oh, yeah.
Franklin thought that he was going to get his wish in 1836 when Jane was expecting a son who they named Franklin Jr. But he died only 3 days later.
Oh, that's very sad.
In 1839, their son Frank Robert was born, but died at the age of 4 from typhus. Then in 1842, there was Benjamin, lovely and lovingly, called Benny. He was obsessed.
Were there any jets?
Over. No, not that I know of.
Okay.
Not at this time. He was obsessed over by his parents and the center of their world.
I'm sure.
Yeah. After losing 2 children already. And then you get this, like, you are holding on.
Absolutely.
So Franklin Pierce served in the American-Mexican War and was injured in battle. Then in 1852, presidential elections were coming and Democrats couldn't agree on their stance on slavery. After a convention in Baltimore and 49 ballots, Franklin Pierce was chosen as their nominee, even though he hadn't served in Congress in over 10 years. Since Franklin wasn't really looking to be a presidential nominee, it was a shock. He was kind of just there. Like, he wasn't really there to be like a part of this.
He's like, oh, okay.
And basically, he was their compromise. Like, they had 2 people that they wanted, and each side wanted one or the other. But Franklin Pierce was the Democrats' compromise. So it was a bit of a shock that he was nominated, and it was also an immediate issue. Because remember, Jane hated politics, government, and Washington, D.C.
Yeah, kind of 3 things that you have to be involved in to be the president's wife.
She allegedly fainted when she found out. Benny, their son, actually wrote a note to his mother saying, quote, "I hope he won't be elected, for I should not like to be at Washington, and I know you would not either." Franklin told Jane that this would set up Benny for a successful life, and Jane agreed. Then, On January 16th of 1853, 2 months before the inauguration, the Boston and Maine Railroad's noon express train was traveling at 40 miles an hour. An axle broke. Only one passenger car, the one the Pierces were riding in, tumbled down an embankment and split in half. Benjamin Pierce, Benny, was the accident's only fatality at the age of 11.
That's so sad.
It's said that during the crash, or in the aftermath of it, Franklin looked over and he did see Benny as they were calling out for him. He tried to pull Jane away so she would not see Benny because he had already seen Benny. And she relented, and unfortunately, it is the sight that haunted her for the rest of her life.
I'm certain.
Yes. So afterward, Jane refused to go with Franklin to Washington, D.C. In her eyes, the meaning of the accident was obvious. God was clearly displeased with Pierce's political ambition, and he took their last child from them as divine punishment. And she told Franklin that for the rest of his life, that he was the cause of the death of their child.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. So Pierce stood on the east front of the U.S. Capitol on March 4th and became president. Jane was not at his side. I was going to
say, without his wife with him, without his son.
Mm-hmm. But Pierce refused to swear the oath of office with his hand on the Bible. Instead, he simply affirmed it using a law book. Some speculated the guilt he felt over Benny's death made him feel unworthy of using a Bible. And also, this is a bit of a fun fact in presidential history. Franklin Pierce is the only president to ever deliver his inaugural address completely from memory. So, President Pierce started out well. He appointed one of the best cabinets ever seen, and it is the only cabinet, again, another first. So he starts out, think of this, he starts out pretty well, right? He is the only one to give his speech from memory, so clearly, he meant it. It wasn't something he had to fake. He appointed one of the best cabinets ever seen, and it is the only cabinet whose entire original members served all 4 years of a presidential term.
Wow.
That's how well they worked together.
Yeah.
So
he's got everything lined up. Everything's going right.
On that part of his life, yes. But no matter his success, there was always the tragedy of Benny. Jane wrote letters to Benny in the afterlife and begged for his forgiveness. Eventually, she moved to the White House begrudgingly, but she was only ever part of a few presidential events. Very, very few. Servants heard her voice through her closed bedroom door, sometimes calling Benny's name over and over, other times laughing as she played with her 3 deceased children. And it was her who claimed she was playing with her children. Jane claimed that she frequently saw them, but she couldn't talk to them. Spiritualism was new, but it was sweeping the country, and in Jane's mind, this made the possibility of speaking to Benny again even more attainable. Jane invited the nation's 2 leading spiritualists, the Fox sisters, Maggie and Kate, from upstate New York to the White House, where it is widely believed and reported that they held a seance to reach Benny. Jane told her sister that Benny came to her 2 nights in a row in dreams after the seance. Some thought they could occasionally hear the footsteps of a child playing throughout the White House after the seance. It's also figured out later on that the Fox sisters were a hoax. So there's a lot there to that portion as well. It didn't really help Jane, though, the seance itself, even though it wasn't known at that time that they were a hoax. She truly believed it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It didn't help her. And her misery just grew. Jane stayed in her portion of the White House and refused to leave. President Pierce fulfilled his daily tasks, but his job, but that was kind of it. His drinking intensified, and nothing he could do could drown the pain that he felt for betraying his wife and the death of his son. even though he went into office fully opposed to slavery, he still allowed the Kansas-Nebraska Act to go through, which would be the beginning of the nation's bloodiest war. That is why people wonder what's going on. He was fully against it. There was no reason to think that he would be okay with it. None.
Mm-hmm.
And he let it go. And so they were like, why? Was it that he was drunk all the time? Was it that he just didn't care? And then that's when a lot of people said, the Pierce family is cursed. And then some people themselves said President Pierce is possessed.
I think he was. He just wasn't focused, and he was just grieving. I mean, really,
Yeah, it was a lot.
He lost his son. That he finally had a child that that lived.
Yep.
More than just 4 years. I mean, 4 years is anyway. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Finally had a child that lived
it's
longer.
almost in a sense
losing a child anyway, but then
it's almost blamed, in a sense you're in the clear, like not in that sense, but in that feeling, because
in that time,
and he wasn't sick
exactly, and in that time in history, usually was a younger child that did die, so that's what you're meaning by in the clear.
Yeah, you realize you hit that point, and you're like. It's like you can kind of release a sigh of breath, even though I understand that's not the same, but he wasn't sick.
Right.
There was nothing.
He was the only one that died, and you were going there because you were, going
They were traveling to visit friends to Philadelphia. So they were not traveling to DC when this happened. Jane had some family in Philadelphia where they were traveling to, and she also wanted to get some shopping done while she was there before they moved to DC. Okay. So they were not on their way to DC when the accident happened. It was just 2 months before his inauguration.
Okay. But still, the fact that just the one child died, but then, so that relationship is gone because your child is gone, and then your wife blames it all on you. She's already not happy that she didn't want you to win this amazing goal, this dream job. She doesn't want you to have that, and she's not happy with it, and begrudgingly says, okay, well, we'll do it because it'll be good for our child who we love so much. And then the child dies, and then she's blaming everything on you, and she loses her mind. And so you have no support from the person who you should have the support from, because she's blaming you for all of it, and she's lost her mind, and you're trying to run a country. And so you're just like, okay, y'all kind of deal with it. Yep. I'll just sign what you tell. I mean, I'm not forgiving it. I'm just trying to put myself in his place.
Yeah,
I can see where it would go to the wayside.
It's a lot. There's a lot to it. It's, but it's thought to believe this was the first start of paranormal activity in the White House because other people were hearing things go on and they knew it wasn't her. So no one's really sure. And in tying it to December of 1856, because we are in the year of 1856.
Do it.
President Pierce became the first president to place a Christmas tree in the White House in the hopes of cheering up Jane.
Oh, that's happy.
It didn't work.
Well, but he tried.
He really did try. So in 1856, he was the first president to do that, to put a Christmas tree in the White House.
And now it's a big deal every year.
Yes. So he's the first one to start that. It didn't work. And once he was out of office, he took Jane on a tour of Europe. But that didn't help either. Jane wore black every day of her life for the rest of her life.
Queen Victoria did that too.
Yes. And in 1863, she died of tuberculosis. While on October 8th of 1869, Franklin Pierce died from cirrhosis of the liver with only a hired caretaker by his side.
That's so sad.
So, according to the White House Historical Association, the first specter wasn't seen in the White House until 1862. Officially, that's what they say. So, let's see what they have to say officially.
Officially?
Officially. And this is specifically titled White House Ghost Stories from the White House. This is a .org, people. This is a .org. It could be a .gov, but I don't think they wanted to go that far. So 1862 to 1863, Mary Todd Lincoln, this is another child that died, grieving over her son Willie's death in February, began to participate in spirit circles or seances in the Red Room at the White House and the presidential cottage at the soldiers' home. Spiritualism was wildly popular during the height of the Civil War as families sought comfort for the loss of loved ones. So it's funny that here they mention that Mary Todd Lincoln, like it's the first dated one, but Jane Pierce had seances before that. So I thought it was very weird that they never mention it here. So then 1901 to 1904, Jeremiah Jerry Smith started working at the White House during the Ulysses S. Grant administration in the late 1860s as a footman. And he served as a footman, butler, cook, doorman, and official duster until his retirement approximately 35 years later. A popular character and storyteller, reporters could always count on him on a slow news day. So they would kind of go to Jeremiah Smith and be like, all right, Jerry, what you got for us today? Like,
what's the haps?
What can you tell us for, we got a slow news day. So what can you tell us? He claimed that he had seen the ghosts of Abraham Lincoln, President Grant, President McKinley, and several of the first ladies. Could one of them have been Jane? Because that was the place that she said she saw her son. So could she be one? In 1911, one little known spirit is the unidentified 15-year-old boy who they call the Thing.
Oh, my.
That greatly frightened the Taft domestic staff in 1911. President Taft's military aide, Major Archibald Butt,
Major Butt,
wrote to his sister Clara, the ghost, it seems, is a young boy about 14 or 15 years old. They say that the first knowledge one has of the presence of the Thing is a slight pressure on the shoulder, as if someone were leaning over your shoulder to see what you might be doing. President Taft ordered Major Butt to tell the White House staff that the first member to repeat the stories about the Thing would be fired.
Ooh.
So he knew something and was like, no.
Kind of like Bruno.
Yes, exactly. So here is a list of the ghosts in the White House. First up, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln appears in the Lincoln bedroom in the yellow oval room. First Lady Grace Coolidge, Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands have all claimed to have seen Lincoln in that room. Willie Lincoln, who died in the White House and was the first child to have known to die in the White House, was seen by staff members of the Grant administration in the 1870s. Andrew Jackson, supposedly lying in his bed in the Queen's Room or the Rose Room, let out a guttural laugh that has been heard in the White House since the 1860s. Mary Todd Lincoln claimed to have heard Jackson laughing, stomping, and swearing throughout the White House.
Ew.
Thomas Jefferson plays his violin in the yellow oval room. Dolly Madison, remember what we talked? Do you remember what Dolly Madison did for the White House?
She saved paintings and she saved she saved different
something that she built there.
Oh, the library, right?
The Rose Garden.
Oh.
So Dolly Madison is frequently seen around the Rose Garden. John Tyler haunts the Blue Room, proposing to Julia Gardner, his second wife. So he lives in like a continuous loop of proposing to his wife, which is very cute. William Henry Harrison haunts the attic. He was the first president to die in the White House. Abigail Adams hung laundry in the East Room, and contemporary staff can smell wet laundry and scents of lavender whenever they walk in the room empty. An unnamed British soldier who perished during the War of 1812 roams the White House holding a torch. He kind of like guards the grounds almost outside, carrying a torch with him. David Burns owned the land on which the White House now stands, and he has been seen and heard in the Yellow Oval Room. And Anna Surratt. She bangs on the doors of the White House, pleading to see President Andrew Johnson. She was there to beg for a pardon for her mother. If you remember, Mary Surratt was named a conspirator in the Lincoln assassination.
Oh.
So Abigail Surratt bangs on the front doors of the White House, which is quite jarring.
I mean, a little bit.
So those are some of the stories of some of the hauntings and goings on in the White House. There's also a lot of other interesting things, kind of like they said, during the time of the Civil War, kind of spiritualism took on a new form. If you look up a lot of different things, there's actually some other stories about how psychics were invited to the White House, and there was an entire presidential cabinet, including the president, at one point that made all of their decisions based off of a psychic.
Oh, my.
All of them. Harry Houdini, he sought out to debunk psychics for a long time. And they actually had a massive issue in the White House because some of the senators and congressmen and politicians were using like astrology and psychics to make decisions.
Oh, my.
And a lot of them, like, they would refuse to admit it. And it was a whole scandal, like, within Congress and everything.
I can see
to
that.
figure out who these people were. What the messed up part was is that some of those people actually did make the right decisions. And that's why a lot of people were mad. Is because they thought they were like cheating. They thought that it was like, they thought they were getting their information from other places. And that they like had some insider, like almost like an insider trading thing, like kind of going on. So there is a lot of things like that that kind of surround the White House. And I did talk briefly about stone tape theory. And so stone tape theory is kind of this, which is why a lot of people say that like some of these things could happen in the White House, that almost like on a cellular level, materials like granite or marble or things can like hold like a tape. Like it can hold memory or something of that sort. It's a whole different philosophy that's very weird and hard to like work its way through to understand. But a lot of people think that because of all the stone that the White House is made of, is that helps like conduct activity better. But yeah, I also looked up some other things. Nope, not Chelsea. Who's the other one? That's on the Today Show. The Clinton.
There's not a Clinton. No.
Not a Clinton, a Bush. She's a Bush.
Oh,
a Jenna.
Yeah, Jenna.
Jenna has been on the Today Show, and Jenna has told her ghost stories of what occurred to her and her sister while they were living in the White House, of different things that they saw and heard and things like that. President Obama played a joke on his daughters when they were telling their haunted ghost stories. They had a sleepover at the White House, and he was apparently listening to them tell like ghost stories to their friends, and he decided to like turn the lights on and off and stuff while they were telling their jokes to scare them. So there are a lot of presidential children who have also, which a lot of people say that children can see ghosts and stuff like that better just because they're younger. They're not as like jaded by the world and things like that. So there are a lot of presidential children that have a lot of ghost stories of things that they have seen and heard. But Abraham Lincoln is a pretty well-known one. A lot of people say that they've seen him around the White House. So very interesting. And I tied all 3 of our stories this week to 1856.
I'm so proud of you.
You know, I worked hard on that one, honestly. I had to find something that was going to be lightish hearted for spooky season. So I hope you all enjoyed it. It was a little bit of a reprieve from what we kind of typically talk about during the week.
Yes.
Haunted hotels, a cryptid, a camel cryptid. Who would have thought?
I mean, if only it really had been Bigfoot riding a camel, that would have been so awesome.
Maybe it was the skeleton of a Bigfoot.
I mean,
riding it. We don't know, honestly.
That would be so cool.
We don't know. They just said that it was a skull with hair. So
and it was human-like. I call Bigfoot.
You never know.
Bigfoot on a camel.
That's what I think it is, honestly. But there's actually, if you Google the red ghost, there's a cartoon illustration of it. It's quite funny.
Oh my.
So anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed the episode this week. Like I said, it was a little bit lightish compared to what we usually talk about. At least no murder.
I'm really glad nobody was
well, other than being trampled by a camel.
Yeah, but I'm glad that nobody was hung by the neck until dead.
There's that. There is that. So
there was no slashing of any
people.
Yes.
So very interesting. As I said before, everything that we talk about in the episode as far as sources is all sourced at the bottom. So there is the YouTube video of the Eldridge Hotel that you can go see. There's also that episode that you can go find for yourself where you can see more about the ghost hunt that they did there. Then, of course, all of the fun things about the White House. There's a ton of different sources with I just scratched the surface of the stories of the White House and the ghost stories that are there. So there's quite a bit more. And I'm sure we'll talk more about Abraham Lincoln when we get to his episode because he will be an episode. So
at least one episode.
Honestly, that'll probably be 2 because it's a lot.
I mean, it's Abraham Lincoln.
Because kind of as an aside, the Lincolns. Like I said, their son, Willie, he died in the White House. He was the first child to die in the White House. Well, Mary Todd Lincoln brought in a psychic to the White House to try and reconnect with her son. This White House was staying at a hotel right near the White House and was drinking buddies with John Wilkes Booth at the hotel right by the White House, and he was going into the White House, and it's alleged that this psychic told Lincoln about his assassination as a future telling, a premonition. And so a lot of people were saying, was it a premonition? Or did he know it was going to happen?
And was he trying to tell him without telling him?
But then other people say, but was the psychic going back and feeding information to John Wilkes Booth? Which is it? And so there's a lot of spiritualism and mysticism surrounding the White House and a lot of different things. So it's quite interesting. And then with Mary Surratt, with her daughter being one of the ones that bangs on the White House door and all these other crazy things that happen around it. It's very interesting, very intriguing. Our website is not haunted.
Nope.
Yet.
It is not going to be haunted.
We can't control that. We never know. But you can find any and all ONUC information you're looking for. It's onenationundercrime.com. And literally, guys, you can find anything there. You can contact us there. You can find our Facebook, our YouTube. We do have a YouTube. We actually get a pretty decent amount of listeners that listen to our YouTubes, and we get nice comments sometimes.
Thanks.
Where people say someone was looking for, actually just this week, someone was looking up information on Bill the Butcher. And they were like, the only thing that I knew about was the movie. And then I found your podcast by searching for Bill the Butcher. And they were like, I know so much more now. So
great.
A lot of things like that. People really enjoy it. So
Were there comments like, Leah, you are the best. I love your voice. You're fantastic.
No, that's just one of my bosses
Oh.
that said that.
Well, we need more of those.
Well, he's fantastic as well, though.
Well,
Anyways.
I mean, thank you. And obviously you are very, very intelligent.
I mean, he is a CTO, but it's neither here nor there. So you can find everything there that you would like. You can become a Patreon by going to patreon.com/OneNationUnderCrime.
We're for that.
We are. We love our patrons. And I hope that you guys have a safe and spooky upcoming Halloween weekend.
Yes.
I have to give the rules of Halloween weekend before we go.
Rules.
If you are going out, always watch your drinks. Do not take a drink from a person unless you ordered the drink and it is coming from a bartender behind a bar. Halloween is a very dangerous time for these things. Please keep this in mind. As females, even males, that's something you should always remember. Do not leave your drink with someone you do not know. Do not take a drink from someone you do not know. Even in the spirit of Halloween weekend, be careful.
Yes. And watch your candy.
Your candy's fine.
No, there is.
People are, let me tell you, if I see one more thing about people lacing candy with weed, one of the best comments that I ever.
Not weed.
Well, any of those things are super expensive. And one person goes, I'm sorry. Who's giving away weed candy? Because I need to go to their house. And they were like, that stuff is so expensive. Trust me, we're not putting it in your kids' candy. We'll talk about it at some point, I'm sure. That'll probably be a Halloween episode one year. But the entire story of the Halloween candy that was laced, it was actually the dad that did it, by the way.
Well.
But yes, I mean, just be careful in any terms of anything. Be on the lookout. Have flashlights. Make sure that you are well illuminated in some way.
And use common sense.
So be safe, guys. I know this is not Halloween yet, but the upcoming weekend that we are going into, a lot of people are going to be doing Halloween fun things because a lot of parties and stuff are coming up this weekend since Halloween falls on a Monday. So please be safe and have a great time. If you have a fun Halloween costume that you would like us to see, please send it to us. I want to see it.
We would love to see all the costumes.
I'd love it.
That includes your fur babies.
Oh, yes.
We love fur baby
That
costumes.
includes babies, fur babies, not Furbies.
No.
Nobody likes a Furby.
No, those things are terrifying.
So there's also a conspiracy for a while that they were stealing government secrets. So, which I think is hilarious.
Those
it
things
would surprise me. They're so scary.
They're terrifying. I do not like them.
So please remember those rules. Those are your only rules. Most importantly, have fun. Second most importantly, we do not want to be reporting your case one day.
No.
So be safe. We love you guys. We will see you here same time.
Different crime.
On Halloween crime.
Spooky.
Probably not a Halloween crime.
No,
we'll see what
spooky.
I can do.
Okay.
And remember that there isn't always liberty and justice for all, but you can eat all of your kids' Reese cups.
Parent tax.
Bye.
Bye.